today, I will be dermatologist, and I will not discuss, unfortunately, of immunology or pathogenesis. Emma is much better than me on this topic. So I will discuss of cutaneous comorbidities in this disease. They are clearly the most frequent comorbidities compared to all the others we have heard this morning. What I would like to discuss in this presentation, 3 topics. Number 1, skin inflammation. It is mostly dermatitis, contact dermatitis, but this is really, contact dermatitis is the most frequent comorbidity in atopic dermatitis. Then skin infections. They are not so frequent compared to contact dermatitis, but they are the most severe comorbidities in atopic dermatitis. And we will finish by skin cancer as comorbidities. So we start with skin inflammation. We will discuss of irritant contact dermatitis, because it is always the most frequent skin inflammation that is seen in the patient. Allergic contact dermatitis, which raise a number of questions. And we will have only a very short, 1 slide, I think, on chronic urticaria. Okay, so contact dermatitis. It is really a significant problem in both children and adults with atopic dermatitis. It is therefore an important comorbidity. It is concomitant, but generally, associated contact dermatitis aggravates the course of atopic dermatitis. So there have been debates for years to know if the prevalence of allergy is decreased, enhanced in atopic dermatitis. By chance, we have this systematic review and meta-analysis of several studies. And finally, the answer is allergic contact dermatitis is not more frequent in atopic dermatitis patients than in non-atopic dermatitis patients. So I think now this is settled. However, the spectrum of allergen is different. We'll see that later. The problem actually is that allergic contact dermatitis may be really a differential diagnosis of atopic dermatitis, especially the last case we saw was generalized methylisothiazolinone allergic contact dermatitis, which was treated as atopic dermatitis for 5 years. So really, this is really important, and therefore patch testing is very relevant in atopic dermatitis patients. Irritant contact dermatitis, we will see that later, is very common and is more frequent in atopic dermatitis patients than allergic contact dermatitis. Important to make the difference between the two. So I told you allergy is not more frequent in atopic dermatitis patients, but the profile of sensitization is different. And the allergens which are the most commonly found in atopic dermatitis allergic patients come from personal care products. So we have fragrances, wool alcohol, lanolin, amercol, and cocamidopropylbetaine. And this is really a problem for us because cocamidopropylbetaine and amercol are not in the usual baseline series. They are not in the true test, and therefore they really have to be added when we check for allergy in these patients. As you know, cocamidopropylbetaine is a surfactant, which is prevalent in most of liquid soaps, shampoos, toothpaste. So this is really an important allergen for AD. By chance, the prevalence of sensitization to corticosteroid, which are tested here as budesonide and tixocortol pivalate in the baseline series, have really low frequency in our patients. So this is, of course, corticosteroid allergy exists in atopic dermatitis patients, but not more than in patients with other forms of eczema which are treated with corticosteroids. So patch testing is relevant in patients with atopic dermatitis. Who to test? Do we test everybody? No. We test mostly patients who are unresponsive to a normal classical topical treatment associating emollients and corticosteroids. We test hand and head and neck dermatitis. We test dermatitis with only adult and adolescent onset, and we always test before initiating systemic immunosuppressants. And how to test? I remind you that generally it's better to test where eczema is in remission. If not, you increase the probability of having false positive patch test just by irritation. We test the baseline series, cocamidopropylbetaine, Amercol are added. We test all the personal products and especially emollients. So as I told you, irritant contact dermatitis is very frequent, and it is more frequent than allergic contact dermatitis as a comorbidity in AD patients. We all know clinically that atopic dermatitis patients have an increased susceptibility to irritants. There are very few studies, by the way, on this topic. There are very nice experimental studies using SLS as a typical irritant and showing that when SLS is put on the skin of AD patients, there is, compared to the skin, the response observed on the skin of non-AD patients, there is increased clinical inflammatory response, what you can see, enhanced epidermal thickening, increased tulle. This is worse in winter, and this is also enhanced if there is an active eczema. So, obviously, these patients we know are prone to non-specific, we call it irritant skin inflammation. There are several reasons to that. We just heard that the altered epidermal barrier allows the penetration of chemicals, which is higher due to this alteration. And we learned more recently, and especially from Emma Gutmann group, that the normal-looking skin of atopic dermatitis patients actually is not normal. There is a subclinical inflammation, and this explains why it is very easy to induce a clinical inflammation just by adding an irritant or by adding a chemical which will not lead to any symptom in patients who will not have this subclinical inflammation. I think this is really a major point which explains a lot of the cutaneous comorbidities that we see and the cutaneous comorbidities that we don't see. We will discuss of cancer. I think this subclinical inflammation is probably responsible for the low rate, finally, of skin cancer and especially melanoma we see in these patients. So hand eczema, it's really a big problem for AD patients. We know from epidemiological studies, we already heard from them that childhood AD is a risk factor for hand eczema in adults. And you see here, 20% of the patients with hand eczema had childhood eczema. These are adults compared to only 5% of patients with hand eczema without childhood eczema. So this is a risk factor. Now, if we move the other side, that is if we start with hand eczema and not with atopic dermatitis, I put here for your information the latest classification of hand eczema in 7 subgroups. And you have here the prevalence of each group representing the major etiological factors for hand eczema. You see that the irritant contact dermatitis is number 1. Allergic contact dermatitis is the second cause of hand eczema. Atopic dermatitis is the third cause of hand eczema. Atopic dermatitis is really the hand eczema that occurred in AD patients is not work-related, but it is obviously work-aggravated because when you use your hands, if they are already endowed with this subclinical inflammation, it's very easy to understand that you will finally develop clinically relevant dermatitis. Okay. One slide I told you on chronic urticaria. The prevalence of CU in atopic dermatitis patients is enhanced, 3 times more chronic urticaria in these patients. As you know, chronic urticaria could be associated with what I call an atopy status or an autoimmunity status. And just to give you some very simple information, I just remind here results of one study we published in the last years on 100 patients with chronic urticaria. We checked in those patients, very, very simple study, probably too simple study. We checked what we call the autoimmune status just by checking for anti-nuclear antibodies in the serum or anti-TPO antibodies. This is what we call autoimmune status. We tested for atopy status just by checking for sensitization, either by prick test, 2 positive prick tests to pneumallergen, or by positive seric specific IgE. And the results are here. You see that 50% of the CU patients have a concomitant atopic status. 30% of the patients have a concomitant autoimmune status. So we can say that chronic, and you know that, but really chronic urticaria is part of the atopic gasesis. Chronic urticaria is not very often cited. When we discuss of atopic diseases, we think of atopic dermatitis, asthma, hay fever, food allergy. Chronic urticaria is not often stated as an atopic disorder. Okay, so this is for the contact dermatitis and chronic urticaria comorbidities. I switch to the skin infection. This is a much more serious problem because it could be very severe in patients. We know that these patients are prone to infections, and especially severe infections. Could be bacterial, could be viral, here Eczema herpeticum, Molluscum contagiosum. So what I want to discuss with you is which patients are prone to this infection, which bugs give this infection, the impact on patients' health, the impact on medical expenditure, and finally, if we can, why AD patients are susceptible to infection. So which patients are susceptible? It is very clear that the risk of skin infection correlates with the severity of eczema. And this is due to the severity of epidermal barrier defect and also to the existence of a filaggrin deficiency. This is good news for us because it means that by treating correctly our patient, we really have probably the best preventive way to see them with severe infection. One point to keep in mind is that there is a strange relationship, a very, very close relationship between what people call colonization, infection, and induction of inflammation. We know that bacteria, especially Staphylococcus aureus, certain strain, can induce inflammation, and the skin inflammation, the eczema, promotes the development of the bug. So there is this sort of vicious circle. We will come back later when we will discuss of Staphylococcus aureus. So which bugs? Not all bugs. Staph aureus is number one, could be also Streptococcus pyogenes. This bacteria gives impetigo, cellulitis, abscesses. Viruses, herpes simplex virus is really the most prevalent, could be vaccinia, Coxsackie, Molluscum contagiosum virus, and human papillomavirus. And this virus can give very severe form of the disease, even life-threatening form of the disease, Eczema herpeticum, Eczema vaccinatum, Coxsackium, Molluscum contagiosum, and warts. AD patients are also more susceptible to fungi, but I will not discuss at this point today. So what is the impact of these infections of the clinical symptoms? Infections are almost always associated with exacerbation and flares. It is associated with the chronicity of the disease. And what I tell you here has been shown for the colonization with Staphylococcus aureus, for the infection with herpes virus, Molluscum contagiosum, and human papillomavirus. These infections could become invasive with bacteremia, erysipelas, and a lot of infectious in different organs. One very, very terrible, dramatic complication is really the eczema herpeticum, which could lead to septic shock. A third impact on not only patient's health, but just the health system is the increased prevalence of bugs and Staphylococcus aureus, which are resistant to conventional penicillin therapy because they are methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus. So I just want to illustrate these different infections. This is generalized impetigo. I don't know how you call this, due to Staphylococcus aureus, and the patient was really very bad when he entered the clinic. This is a face erysipelas. And you see that it started here by a very, very limited impetigo. One slide on eczema herpeticum, just to remind you that it is frequent. It could occur in 3% of atopic dermatitis patients. There are several risk factors. Early onset of atopic dermatitis, as always, severe atopic dermatitis. I think that the bottom line of this presentation is cutaneous comorbidities occur when the atopic dermatitis is severe. It means we need really to take care of the patient and manage the skin inflammation. It's more frequent when patients have head and neck dermatitis, previous history of infection with herpes virus, and a real strong atopy status with increased level of total and specific IgE. Okay, so this was the consequence of the infection on the patient health. What about the impact on medical expenditures? This study was very interesting, and unless the co-chairs tell me that it is not a good study on the statistical or epidemiological way, it is really a 20-year survey of 4 million of atopic dermatitis patients, and from these 4 million patients which were followed for 1 year, 600,000 developed infection. And from this, the total expenditure per patient and per year was calculated. And as you see, there is a very important increase in the medical expenses when there are skin infections in these patients compared to the patients who have a non-infected atopic dermatitis. It is the same for the cost of outpatient visit per patient and per year, and the cost of emergency department visit per patient and per year. So infections are really a major health problem when they occur in these patients. So do we know the reasons for this increased prevalence of infection in atopic dermatitis? There are several. We already discussed of the epidermal barrier integrity. We know that filaggrin deficiency is associated with an increased risk of infection and molluscum contagiosum. This is well documented in the literature. Skin inflammation also is important. We know that the best way to decrease the colonization by bacteria, and especially Staphylococcus aureus, is the use of anti-inflammatory topicals, and we know that topical corticosteroids do that much better than topical antibiotics or topical antiseptics. So blocking the inflammation really decreases the colonization. We just learned from the dupilumab study. Dupilumab is a type 2 cytokine antagonist. We just learned from these studies that there is a curious side effect which is associated with dupilumab, which is the statistically significant decrease in cutaneous infection and eczema herpeticum. Conversely, there is not a decrease in the overall infections. It is really a skin-specific effect. So this shows that really by blocking the inflammation, you really decrease the possibility of the patient to be infected. And finally, there is this problem of Staphylococcus, which colonizes the skin of atopic dermatitis patient. I want to spend 2 slides on this topic. Most of the patients are colonized with Staphylococcus aureus on the skin. Colonization is observed before the onset of atopic dermatitis. It is exaggerated before the flares and the exacerbations. This reduces the quality and quantity of the microbiome, and especially its diversity. And it has several biological consequences. It downregulates that junction barrier, it stimulates biofilm formation, and it induces skin inflammation. So until now, we knew that, but we didn't explain it very well. And in the last years, there have been wonderful contributions, and which have been summarized by Richard Gallo in a highlight of these host cell and microbe papers. Some virulence factors, which are produced by certain strain of Staphylococcus aureus, actually activate epidermal cells, and the epidermal cells which are activated, they will produce different molecules, cytokines, chemokines, which will induce the skin inflammation and which will finally allow the penetration of the microorganism and the subsequent infection. So Staph aureus, probably other bugs also, virus also do that, but Staph aureus promotes both skin inflammation and infection, and this is clearly explained. I don't go into details, but if you want to know exactly the name of the molecules which are involved, please refer to the paper. I will finish by the last point I want to discuss with you, that is skin cancer in atopic dermatitis. We'll see the type of cancer, the role of systemic and topical immunosuppression in the development of skin cancer in these patients. So the type of cancer first, but first the question, are atopic dermatitis patients more at risk of cancer than any other person? The answer is very reassuring. It seems that no, they are not such as risk, especially when we compare cancer with the infection I just discussed. If I can tell you this, it is because there has been this systematic overview of the papers and one meta-analysis of 18 studies which give the conclusion for the different type of cancer. So there is no increased risk of malignant melanoma in this patient. And there is this funny observation, atopic dermatitis patients have a decrease in the number of large nevi. So maybe this is linked, maybe because they have a decrease in the number of large nevi, maybe this is why there is no risk of increased malignant melanoma. It is probably more related to the type of inflammation that drives the atopic dermatitis inflammation. There is no increased risk of squamous cell carcinoma. There is an increased risk of basal cell carcinoma. It is significant, but the authors of the meta-analysis, they just emphasize that very few studies they analyze adjusted this risk to the phenotype, the sun exposure, and the UV treatments that than the patients could have been receiving. So I think this is very reassuring. We can discuss this. Probably some of you have different opinions. Lymphoma is another problem. There is still a controversy regarding the potential increased risk of lymphoma in atopic dermatitis. But the main problem is really the confusion, the differential diagnosis that could be made in some patients with really a severe atopic dermatitis, the differential diagnosis with T-cell lymphoma at the beginning. We also have a meta-analysis, recent one by Legendre, showing that there is a slight increased risk of lymphoma, that it occurs in the severe patients who are immunosuppressed, but again, the data do not allow to eliminate the possibility that some patients with classical cutaneous T-cell lymphoma were included as atopic dermatitis in this study. So the message is really that CTCL should be ruled out in patients with severe atopic dermatitis, and it is important to do skin biopsy for histology and search for T-cell clonality in these patients, especially if we think of putting them under immunosuppressive treatment. What is the role of systemic immunosuppression in these patients? Finally, there is no more risk in AD patients compared to the general population. You know that organ transplanted patients have a high, under immunosuppressive treatment, have a higher risk to develop squamous cell carcinoma. This is what is observed here in this study where 500 AD patients under systemic immunosuppression were checked for carcinoma. Squamous cell carcinoma was more frequent, but again, it is in the range of what we are expected to see in organ transplant patients. So when we have a patient under immunosuppressant, we need to check carefully for the occurrence of skin cancer. What is the role of topical immunosuppression? Is there a role of topical immunosuppression? This is a very, very important question, and I love this paper. A Danish study, 30,000 children treated with calcineurin inhibitors, 400,000 treated with topical corticosteroids, and 600,000 controls. And when they analyze the occurrence of malignant melanoma, non-melanoma skin cancer, and lymphoma in these patients, they don't find any increased risk in the atopic dermatitis population. So really, I think this is, again, very reassuring for our patients and for us, and this is probably a message we want to diffuse to our colleagues, allergologists, pediatricians who take care of these patients and who sometimes are very reluctant to the use of calcineurin inhibitors and corticosteroids. So I think this was my almost last slide. If I want to summarize about the cutaneous comorbidities I discussed with you, so skin inflammation, contact dermatitis, it is the most frequent comorbidity. Irritant contact dermatitis is very common. We have to think about allergic contact dermatitis, and patch testing is important with the relevant allergen, and we have to test personal products, emollients, and to add these Amercol and cocamidopropyl betaine. Skin infections, it is really the most severe comorbidity. And what I understood from all the papers I read is that really, especially the new experimental derived papers, is that treating the patients, maintaining a low level of skin inflammation, and limiting the Staph aureus colonization is probably the best prevention of severe skin infections. And finally, for skin cancer, the issue is in atopic dermatitis patient is the same that for any other patient that we see. Particular attention has been paid to immunosuppressed patients, and there is, again, this differential diagnosis between lymphoma and atopic dermatitis that we need really to think of. So this is my last slide, and I just want to introduce the team. I'm very happy to work with both the clinical research and the experimental team. And for this presentation, I particularly thank Audrey Nussbaum, and I thank you for your attention.